Hi everyone, Gene here, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, where every single week we answer the most common and uncommon questions about tapping and EFT so you can get the most out of your practice. Today we're going to be stepping into part 4 of our 5-part guide on the most common questions asked about tapping that I get at the website. Back in part number 1, we talked about how to make EFT a more common part of your daily routine. I've actually created a little program where you will receive an email in your inbox every single day for the next 248 days, which is basically 9 months, where you'll get access to a new tap along every single day. For information on how you can get those tap alongs, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/daily. That's tappingqa.com/daily. The other thing is, if you would like to receive these podcasts every single week delivered directly to you, all you need to do is go to tappingpodcast.com and you will get all of the information, regardless how you consume audio, how you can get this every single week. This is Gene Monterastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 339, originally aired November 28th, 2018. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today, we're going to be talking about the 4th part of our 5-part series on the most commonly asked questions. And question number 4 is, how do I deal with and respond to self-criticism? And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you a really simple 8-step process that I use to respond to that critical voice of the self-criticism and how you can use that right away. For those of you who support the podcast, you should have received the November Donors Only podcast inside of your podcast feed. If you haven't done that, you can always drop me a note, Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. If you would like to be in a situation where you get those bonus podcasts every single month, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/support. The critical voice is something that's really tricky. I was in a workshop one time, we were talking about the critical voice, and the presenter said, everybody has a critical voice. And the person in the front row just raises her hand out of nowhere, and it caught the instructor off guard because it wasn't a point where questions were going to be asked. It was really early on. And just kind of taken aback, he calls on her and she goes, I don't have a critical voice. And then she pauses and she goes, I have a critical committee. And we all live in that space where there is that voice inside of our head that is telling us that we should be doing better. Now, over the course of this conversation, I am going to talk about the critical voice as if it has a personality, as if it is almost sentient and being driven in its own way. And that's not the case. I'm not saying that you have multiple personalities inside of you. But when responding to different parts of our system, I have found it most effective to disassociate that part a little bit so we can have a conversation with it. Again, we're just gathering information from ourselves, but by disassociating a little bit and almost pretending that it has a personality, it puts us into a position where we're no longer intellectually trying to figure out what's going on, but we're gathering information from our subconscious mind. Because I have discovered with my clients and with myself, we are notoriously bad eyewitnesses to our experience. And so if intellectually we are trying to figure out the problem, oftentimes we're going to come to conclusions that don't actually represent the experience that we are having. And so this is an opportunity for us to dive in and get information from our system in a slightly different way. Now, the critical voice itself is motivated by good. It's not there to just beat you up, even though it feels like its only reason for existing is to beat us up. Instead, the critical voice is trying to encourage us to do better. The problem is, by simply criticizing us all the time, it doesn't actually do that. So here is the 8-step process that I use to get in touch with and transform the critical voice. So step number 1 is to just tune in and connect with the critical voice. And again, like I said, what we're going to do when we do this is we want to imagine that this critical voice is actually something that is operating on its own. And so we want to disassociate from that. So you might just notice the voice. You might actually put the voice on some cartoon character that's talking to you. Just imagine it in some way. So you're not just intellectually experiencing the criticism, but you're recognizing the voice that is speaking that criticism. So the second thing that we want to do is we want to affirm the critical voice. Now, this might seem a little bit counterintuitive because we've already acknowledged the fact that the critical voice is pushing us in a way that is unhelpful. Constantly having this part of us beating ourselves up on the inside does not actually make it better for us. But we can recognize the fact that it does want better, and we can affirm the fact that that is the case. So when tapping on something like this, the tapping is simple as, I appreciate the fact that my critical voice exists because it wants me to be healthier. It wants me to do better. And it is constantly pointing out all of the things that are going wrong. And I appreciate the fact that there is a part of me that is motivated by me doing better and is motivated by wanting better for me. So you'll notice inside of that, we haven't talked about its tactics at all. We're only talking about its motivation. And this becomes really critical because what we're doing is we're taking this issue and we're turning it into an ally. We're acknowledging that this part is there working with us and working for us, which leads us to part 3. The third step in all of this is then to explain to the critical voice what it's actually doing. And so as we continue tapping, the tapping continues. And I recognize the fact that even though my critical voice is motivated by taking care of me, it's not actually being helpful. By constantly criticizing me, it is debilitating my action. By constantly criticizing me, it's sucking my motivation away. By constantly criticizing me, it makes me not want to do anything at all. So the combination of these two parts in step 2 and step 3 is we're acknowledging that it is motivated by good, but then we're explaining to the critical voice that it's not actually being helpful in the actions that it's taking. And so what this does is this takes us to step 4. In this case, what we're going to do is we're actually going to explain to the critical voice the times in our past where the critical voice has actually crippled us. Yesterday, when I was trying to take action, I heard that voice gnawing in my head that I was going to fail if I tried this, so I didn't take any action at all. And I would do that while tapping. By pointing out what is going on, again, we're bringing proof to bear to this critical voice that its tactics are not being useful. Step 5 is to transform the critical voice into something that is helpful. I almost think about this kind of like we're taking an employee that is motivated by acting in a particular way to help the company, but isn't doing it in the right way. So we're going to give it new skills. So tapping on this might be something like, I know the critical voice is powerful. I've felt its power in my life. But instead of pointing out all of the things that I have done wrong, there is a way that this voice can be more helpful. I want to harness the power of my critical voice to be a force of good. Instead of pointing out everything that could go wrong and all of the mistakes in the past, I asked the critical voice instead to become the voice of encouragement. When it notices things are going to be hard, instead of beating me up, it will root me on. Instead of pointing out my mistakes, I want it to help to find new creative solutions. Now, that tapping I just did right there, that would be no different than you turning to someone who is being a grumpopotamus at work and just asking them to continue to show up, but show up in a slightly different way. And the words that I use there, you don't use those exact words, but the idea is the piece that's important. By pointing out how we navigate this into acting in a new way, gives that critical voice the opportunity to start choosing new tactics. The 6th step is to give the critical voice, which is now a new resource that's going to be the voice of encouragement, to give it the tools that it needs to be able to do that, because it's been acting in a particular way for so long. And again, I love this idea of retraining an employee. So when I'm doing something like this, I've personified this thing and I'm having a conversation with it. And while I'm tapping, I just ask it, like, what do you need to act in this new way? What training do you need? And again, I'm actually asking the part of me how I could train it. I'm going to give it that training. What energy do you need to be able to transform in this way? What other parts of my system do you need to be connected to? So what I'm doing is, again, this is all part of us. It's not really a different part, but I'm taking this one part of it and I'm giving it agency to name the things it needs in order to be successful and for us to move forward in a healthy way. And you'll be shocked and amazed at some of the things this part will come up with. I actually was doing this with a client one time, and they imagined this part of their critical voice that was acting in a way that wasn't useful. And my client taught the critical voice, which it saw as a little person inside of it, it taught the little critical voice person how to tap. So not only was he tapping, but he had this internal part that was tapping. And you don't have to go that far, but what it does is it gives you an opportunity to see this as, I'm just giving resources to this point. The seventh step in this process is to reassure the newly named encouraging voice that used to be our critical voice. Again, while I'm tapping, I just say, I recognize the fact I'm asking my system to act in a new way. I'm asking a part of me to do something that is different than what it has done for its entire existence. And because I know that this is a process of transformation, I give this part permission to ask for the help it needs. And I give this part permission to recognize the fact it doesn't have to be perfect as it's doing this. Because if I give this part time and space to transform, then it's going to be an amazing asset for me as I move forward. So again, I'm treating it like an employee. I'm reassuring it. I'm putting it in the pace to say, hey, this is a process. It's okay. It's a process. And because it's a process, we're going to get through this together. And any improvement you make is going to make a difference for me as I move forward. And again, just tapping the entire time you're doing that. And then the last step of this process is just to check in later. Again, it's not this one-time thing that we tap on it. So you've imagined your critical voice in some way. 2 or 3 days from now, take another deep breath, tune back into the critical voice. It might look exactly the same. It might look different because this part is transforming. You might notice your critical voice showing up in different areas of your life. Go through the process again. You might find that the first time through it shows up less professionally, but shows up more personally. Or it shows up less personally and it shows up more in the areas of your life where you're dealing with your health and your well-being. But by going through this process in a methodical way, what we're doing is we're just slowly transforming the way this resource shows up. This powerful part that wants what's good for us. By doing that, it makes it so much easier for us to move forward in a way that is healthy and productive. So again, the 8 steps. Number 1, tune into the critical voice and just connect with it. Step 2, affirm the motivation of the critical voice wanting you to be more successful. 3, explain to the critical voice how it is being detrimental. 4, give the critical voice proof from our lives that its tactics are not working. 5, transform the critical voice into something that is helpful, like the encouraging voice. 6, give the newly transformed resource, the encouraging voice, the resources it needs to move forward. 7, reassure this part that it's a process and it's okay that it's not perfect right away. And number 8, check in, loop back, do this again and again. If you work through this process in this way, you will be shocked and amazed at how quickly that critical voice starts shutting up. And you are in a situation where you're just going to be able to make the actions you want to take in the moment. If you have any questions about this process or anything that feels unclear, please, please, please let me know. You can leave a comment on the website for episode 339. You can send me an email. I can always be reached, Gene, Gene, at tappingqna.com. If you are on the website, you can just click on the contact link. If you are in the Tapping Q&A app, all you got to do is click on contact. You can leave me a voicemail. You can send me an email message. It makes it really simple for you to reach out. Also, if there's someone in your life who you know who could use this resource, please be our ambassador and pass it along. At this point in history, only about 40% of the population listens to podcasts even occasionally. And so there's someone in your life who you could not only, one, be an ambassador that teaches them what podcasting is about and show them all the amazing things that are out there, but two, you could share a resource with them that really might make a difference for them today. So even if you have to just stop the podcast right now, shoot them a text message, send them a note, tell them to go to tappingpodcast.com where the entire archive is, send an email to a friend. I love getting emails from people saying, hey, I joined your list. Hey, I'm listening to the podcast because a friend of mine passed it along. That means the world to me. That's the highest compliment you could pay to me about this resource, is passing it along to someone else. It really means a lot to me. If you have questions or comments about anything at all, a topic you'd like to see us to cover in the future, I can always be reached, Gene, Gene, at tappingqna.com. If you haven't done so, go to tappingqna.com, sign up for our 10-part guide on how you can use tapping to eliminate self-sabotage. There's audios, there's videos, there's tapping scripts, stuff that will help you every single day to make your life more productive as you eliminate your self-sabotaging beliefs. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Monterastelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Monterastelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Monterastelli or Tapping Q&A.